All right, here we go. So, welcome to the show, everybody. It seems like Canada is having its Epstein moment. The moment where we find out, hey, maybe there's a lot of politicians that are maybe have a little bit of blackmail on them, and maybe that explains exactly why they're doing what they're doing. You might not have heard, but just a couple of days ago, it came out from a report came out from NSICOP. We'll talk about what NSICOP is. Essentially, it's a group of Canadian parliamentarians who are tasked with evaluating all of the national security evidence that is too classified for the average Canadian or even the average parliamentarian to take a look at. Well, we got a report from this group of politicians saying, turns out there are actual members of parliament in the House of Commons today, and possibly even in the Canadian Senate, that are willing participants in foreign interference in Canada. It might not be a surprise to you that, well, there's been a lot of meddling in Canada's politics over the past number of years, dating back all the way until 2010, potentially earlier. But I didn't know that it was this bad. It seems there's a possibility that some of these MPs are involved in a sort of honeypot operation, similar to what many people believe Epstein was up to, in that you try to get people into compromised positions where it wouldn't look too good if that information came out. And by using those types of tapes of people in compromised positions, well, you can have a lot of power over them. You can get them to do what you want them to do. You can make them loyal to you instead of loyal to Canada or Canadians, the people that they are representing. Now, I think you're going to be blown away by this story because I was too. And it's something that I've been following for quite a while, all the way back since maybe about a year and a half ago, when Liberal MP Han Dong was accused of only getting his position in the Liberal Party because of heavily interfered with the primary elections for that spot, the leadership race for their for that riding in Canada. So yeah, this story just came out. It's about an illegal casino that was underground. Police found it in about 2020, and it turns out that this casino is one of the things inside of this report saying that, well, people are being caught up in this wealthy elite casino in Markham, and politicians, both provincial politicians in Ontario as well as federal politicians, are lured there to be used. Let's get into this. We got the report from NSICOP, the National Security Information Committee of Parliamentarians, and they are saying there are people in the federal government, of which are their peers, that are willing participants in this foreign interference, which I just thought was wild because it changes the story from being, okay, there's interference going on, but our politicians aren't compromised, to now, okay, well, our politicians are willing participants in this interference, or at the very least have turned a blind eye willingly. They've been willfully blind of what's going on here. Okay, so let's get into the articles and the things that have actually come out. I believe that the best person to sort of look to for this stuff is Sam Cooper, who's a journalist with the Bureau. And I was recently listening in on a podcast that he recorded with another man who I can't recall his name, but I'm going to bring them up because I want to show you this clip. Absolutely wild. If you're not watching this, because I'm going to be uploading this on audio platforms as well, ideally. If you're not watching this, I'll explain what's sort of going on here. We'll pull it up on screen. Okay, and I think it's around the 3-minute mark that they talk about, okay, these willing participants, maybe they're willing as in they actually want to do the thing. Maybe they're willing as in, okay, they're actually loyal to somebody else because there's blackmail on them. Let's listen into this. I'm going to throw my headphones on here. By the way, if you're tuning in, this is the first of a long form kind of vibe that I'm going to try to put out every once in a while, with the disclaimer that I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just sharing the stuff that I'm consuming and what I think about it. Listen to this. This is Sam Cooper talking about exactly what is going on here.
Influence our politicians. They are actually trying to own our politicians and have them by the scruff of the neck through what people would commonly associate with Russian intelligence, which would be relationship compromat. So compromat could be you're doing sketchy financial deals with a person, you're leveraging their greed, getting them to take bribes or getting them into, side deals in another country. Or it could be, the oldest profession, as you know, is called prostitution. And so it could be a sexual compromat. And so the core of the story that I revealed is, as I was being informed about election interference, my sources indicated a very key story was there are allegedly illegal casinos in Vancouver and Toronto that are run, of course, by Chinese mafia, as people that read my book know very well. But they are also clandestinely involving Chinese security forces. And as you know, all along we've been talking about how my research is showing that we have, triads worldwide being, if not probably the most important global criminal and money laundering networks. China is deeply involved, their security services, with these underground, let's just call them financial arms. And so the story is in Markham, there's a 53-room mansion, incredible wealth. People in Canada followed the story that there was a casino bust, an alleged underground Chinese mafia casino. But there was more to the story. My sources said that Chinese intelligence was using this facility allegedly to corrupt or attempt to corrupt Canadian politicians who were very prominent visitors underground to this wealth club or VIP club or, underground casino. And so, we could talk about it for 10 episodes, but in a nutshell, the public interest here is that York Regional Police, in their criminal investigation, they capture cameras from inside the casino. They look at it and they get the idea that this is not just normal crime. This is, they fear Chinese foreign interference operations. And so they go to CSIS, according to my sources, say, we have something, we think you need to look at it. And in a nutshell, CSIS came to believe that the concern was Canadian politicians could be captured in compromising relations on camera. This casino was allegedly a brothel, and this could lead to blackmail. And
so let's just leave it there for a moment. Absolutely an insane story, and one that I think that if most Canadians were following, there would be a lot more talk about it. You don't hear this being talked about in this light from the traditional media sources in Canada, and I think that it should be. I remember back in 2020, let me see if I can find this article. Back in 2020, when they actually found this 53-room mansion in Markham, that was operating as an illegal casino. You might remember this story as well. I believe I talked about it here, at the very least, in the context of the Han Dong sort of stepping away from his position as a member of parliament in the Liberal Party because of some pretty serious allegations made by the Globe and Mail. Of course, after those allegations, Han Dong sued the Globe and Mail. I think largely has a chilling effect on what people will say and what people will do in the media. Don't talk about the wrong things, otherwise you're going to get sued. But on the screen for people who are watching this in video format, take a look at some of these images from this casino. Again, this was covered on CTV News, the discovery of the casino, but yeah, not in the same context that we just heard Sam Cooper talking about it, where this casino was being used as a honeypot operation, trying to lure people in that they want to control, catch them doing compromising things, and then use that to maybe push through more favorable policy to the people who are operating this covert operation. We see here backrat tables. This is stuff where there's $20,000 per hand. These right here. Officer sees more than $20,000. So Sam Cooper was talking about how it was $20,000 up to $20,000 a hand. So the large amounts of money we're seeing here, cash and firearms all seized at the site. This mega mansion, 53 rooms, luxury cars out front, all kinds of different stuff going on. This is back in 2020, I believe. Let me see the date. Yeah, this is September 30th, 2020 that there was this bust. But we didn't hear exactly what was going on until recently. And this is only becoming more of a story in the media right now as this committee of parliamentarians has reported there's actually people inside the Canadian government that are willingly going along with this interference. It's something that the current government hasn't taken seriously enough, and they're continuing to not take seriously enough, and are, I think, hoping that the story will just go away so Canadians stop thinking about it, Canadians stop talking about it. So we heard Sam Cooper there talking about how there are tapes who they believe include officials, elected officials, and those tapes were seized by the York Regional Police, saying, "Okay, we gotta get our hands on this. We've got to elevate this. We've got to what's the word for that? We've got to move this up the food chain, right? We got to send this to somebody who can deal with this kind of operation happening just outside of Toronto in Markham." So they take these tapes to CSIS, the Canadian Security and Intelligence, the kind of like the Intelligence Bureau for Canada. And they take them there and say, you got to deal with this. You got to deal with these tapes. You got to investigate this. You got to get a warrant, CSIS, so that you can use these tapes, because there's these firewalls between the police and CSIS, so that CSIS can't just unjustly get evidence from these individual police agencies. But it turns out that CSIS doesn't end up getting access to these tapes, and the whole case falls apart. Mysteriously, the case even gets dropped. The main organizer of the casino I have here had to pay about $1 million. And after that $1 million went away, or after that $1 million was paid, everything went away, and nobody has access to these tapes anymore. Allegedly, part of the deal that was struck either between CSIS and the people who were involved, or otherwise, allegedly part of that deal was that they wouldn't be able to share or use these tapes that could have compromised Canadian members of Parliament on tape doing maybe not the most legal things. It makes you think of what happened with Epstein. I know that there's lots of people who believe that whole situation was just one guy who was operating this island and all of the salacious activities going on there. That's not what I personally believe. I think that there's likely connections with other intelligence agencies, and largely to get control of people, right? If you get the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world on camera doing things that aren't legal, right? Doing things that would absolutely destroy their careers if they were found to be true, or if those tapes were ever released. That gives you a lot of power over the people who are the most powerful, right? Billionaires, politicians, these are the types of people that get involved in these situations. And it seems like it's a similar operation here, where we're bringing in politicians to have more control and more power over them. And it turns out, like, there are names. There are individual names. We don't have the tapes. We've never had access to the tapes, but there are names of these parliamentarians that are involved in this situation, and at the very least are the people that are willingly going along with the election interference in Canada and actively trying to make it happen. But the only people who have access to these names are the people who are in NSICOP. This is the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. Now, this organization, this committee, I think there's like about 8 people on it. This committee is something that we've covered here on the channel before. This is something that was actually put into place by the federal Liberal government, this current government, put into place NSICOP. So because they are the ones that put that into place, you'll often hear the Liberal government saying, hey, we know that there's an interference in Canada. We're the only ones that are taking it seriously. We put together this committee of parliamentarians who we've given extreme security clearances to so that they can find out exactly what is going on, what our intelligence agencies are telling us. These people have the clearance. They can look at stuff and then make recommendations as to how exactly we should handle this. So they'll say, we're the good guys here. We're doing things right. This committee didn't even exist in the past. So we can't be involved in this foreign interference. And let me be clear, I don't think that it's just the Liberal MPs involved in this. I think this is every party, every single party, because why wouldn't it be, right? If you're a foreign power that wants to have control over a country, well, there's no guarantee that only one party will be in power, even if you would like them to be. I believe this spans into the Conservative Party as well, into every single party. Well, maybe not the NDP and the Green. There's just less MPs. Yeah, but who knows? We don't have the names yet. But NSICOP has these names. This is what I'm getting at. They have these names, but the interesting thing about this committee of parliamentarians is that, well, even if they find anything out, they can't really do anything about it. They cannot really do anything about it, even if they wanted to, right? They have this extremely high level of security clearance to get all of the information that the CSIS is bringing to them. And then they can write reports and recommendations on how the government should handle this. How should they make changes to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen again in the future? This is the report that they wrote, this 90-page report that just came out a few days ago, and threw the House of Commons into shambles as people realized just how captured the Canadian government seems to be by this situation. So NSICOP can write these reports, write these recommendations. But the interesting thing is, NSICOP, all of the parliamentarians on that, all of the MPs that were elected by Canadians in different ridings, the people who are on that committee are appointed to that committee by the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister gets to choose which people are on this committee, one of the most important committees, because they're the only people who have access to this very highly classified information. The Prime Minister gets to choose who's on that committee. But not only that, once the committee writes a big report about all the things that are happening, all the things that are being done, well, then that report goes back through the Prime Minister's office, at which point they can redact whatever they want. There's a number of different things here. Let me see if I have the report here in my notes. There is a number of different things that are redacted from this giant document. All that to say, the Prime Minister's office gets to redact whatever they want from it. This includes the names of individuals who are involved in this. So that's been redacted from this report. Not only do the Canadian public not know who the people are who are alleged to be willingly going along with this operation, not only do Canadian citizens not have that information, but also all of the other members of Parliament, everybody who's not on this NSICOP, this National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, everybody else, the other around 200 members of Parliament who aren't on this committee, only get access to what the public does. The report that came out that talks all about this operation and how there could be blackmail being used to make people act in certain ways, and interference in the sort of equivalent to the American primary elections. In Canada, we have like leadership races for each individual riding. So like in the case of Han Dong, the whole situation there was that, okay, there were multiple different Liberal candidates to be the Liberal nominee for the Don Mills riding in Toronto. And even if there wasn't interference on a high scale for the vote that actual Canadians went in on and actually voted for in that riding of Don Mills North, I think it's called, even if there wasn't as much interference there, there was a high degree of interference in the primary, the leadership race, between choosing which Liberal will represent the Liberals in this election. It seems there was a lot of interference there, and on top of that, we have people who have made it into the House of Commons that are still going along with these operations, pushing forward policies that would be in favor of the people who are operating these casinos, who it seems like is largely tied to the Chinese government. Again, I'm saying all this stuff. Don't take my word for it. Take a look into it for yourself. I'm an idiot guy on the internet talking about what I'm seeing out there. But this is blowing my mind. It is blowing my mind. So, more about NSICOP. This committee of parliamentarians, they can redact things, or they have to have this redaction process. The Prime Minister's office will redact things before it goes out to the public. All the other parliamentarians do not know. They don't have any idea who these people are. So the only people who know the names of the people who are compromised in the House of Commons, even amongst the people who are in the House of Commons, they don't know. The only people that know are the people on this committee who have the extreme security clearance. Now, will we ever get the names of the people who are involved in this operation? Will we get the names of the parliamentarians who either are willingly selling out for money or for political influence, or these parliamentarians who have maybe gone to this giant casino and maybe gone into a back room and done something with someone who's a little bit too young and is caught on camera? Well, whether it's the financial side or whether it's the blackmail side, I don't think the public's going to get these names. The only way, and this is from Andrew Coyne article, it talks about these people should be named and shamed. This is what the headline says. I think the only way that we're going to get these names is if someone on that committee leaks it out to another parliamentarian, another MP, so that they can then stand in the House of Commons and say, this is the information I have. They would be protected by parliamentary privilege, or there's some sort of extra protection, I think, if you say something in the House of Commons that you. But I guess the idea is that the people on this committee, if they were found to have leaked something or broken their oaths when it comes to their national security clearance, that they could face time, right? So the federal government will say, well, we can't be so heavily involved in interference. We're actually the government that takes this interference the most seriously because we created this committee of parliamentarians. But I think that has not a lot of credibility when that committee that's put together not only cannot release unredacted reports to the public, but they also cannot share this information with the other members of parliament in any way because they'd be breaking their security clearances. Now, other members of parliament can get those same clearance levels. Like there was a whole controversy where Polyev wouldn't get that security clearance to read some of the previous reports, even before this bombshell one. And people were saying, well, you're just unserious. You don't actually want to know what's going on here. But then the other side of things says, well, if you take these oaths to have this extremely high level of security clearance, well, then you no longer can be totally honest with the Canadian public. Once you take the oaths, you can't share any information about it. So some people will say, well, if you take the oath, they're essentially silenced. So this is the frustrating thing about the Committee of Parliamentarians, who wrote this giant report outing this entire network of members of Parliament who are not entirely loyal to Canada and are willingly going along, be it for money or for political help, right? Getting the nomination, getting power, or because they're being blackmailed. There are people who are going along with this operation. The Committee of Parliamentarians knows it. Now everybody knows it, but we don't have the names, and we definitely don't have the tapes. I don't even think that NSICOP has access to the tapes, but there's a chance that the York Regional Police, who went to this mansion, found some stuff, and they're like, hey, I recognize that face, seen that guy. seen that guy, seen his name on a ballot, perhaps. Could be conservative, could be liberal, could be federal, could be provincial. There's a chance that they saw that. They're like, hey, this is a bigger operation than we thought. This is a bigger deal than we thought. This is above our pay grade as a regional police force. So they took it to CSIS. Case falls apart. They don't get access to the tapes. Allegedly, these tapes are lost because of the deal to pay $1 million to drop all of these cases, this sort of plea deal. I don't know if that's the right terminology for it. But we don't have access to these tapes. And I know that I sound like a conspiracy theorist coming on here talking about what's going on, but based on all of these reports from multiple different news sites, this is what I'm gathering. And it does sound a lot like Epstein, getting people sort of tied to a new loyalty because they have some dirt on you. And I think it's possible that this goes beyond just this report, maybe even deeper than we think. It could be that everyone's avoiding putting the names out. Everyone's avoiding putting the names out because maybe they know, hey, there's a lot more of us than the public would be able to handle if these names came out. Maybe they're bigger names. Maybe they're leaders of federal parties. Maybe they're leaders of provincial parties getting involved here. But the thing is, you're going, like, you could say this is a conspiracy theorist who's just talking out of his ass about what he thinks is going on. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll take that label until you show me that it's not true, the things that I'm saying. Give me some evidence. Give me some evidence that you're doing something. You don't give me the names, sure, but give me some evidence that these people will not be in Parliament for the next decade because we never find out the names. There's no assurances that that's the case. There's no assurances that that's the case, and as a result, are we really being represented as individual Canadians if there's loyalty to not just the people in their riding, but maybe to not getting found out about doing some pretty shitty stuff in the back room of a casino? It's a lot. And people ask me, what do I think about this? Well, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good. And I think I need a lot of coffee to get through this. If you're just finding this video, I have a main channel talking about more financial stuff, more stuff about global macroeconomics, what's going on in the financial system. But I couldn't turn up an opportunity to talk about this stuff as it's happening, while it's happening. Just insane. Just insane. Yeah, and nobody can be prosecuted because of national security concerns. I think that's what people would say to me, saying, well, don't talk about this stuff that you don't know. You can't actually ever have the evidence. You can't actually ever know what's going on here for certain, because nobody is going to share that kind of national security information with the public. This is what the Canadian politicians have said over the past year and a half, right? As I've been following this story, is that, hey, we can't really tell you what's going on here because, that would be kind of betraying our national security allies in America and in Australia if we just started sharing all this intelligence that we have. And it would actually make that intelligence less valuable because it would be more out in the open. It's not intelligence anymore if it's commonly known information. Sure, I can understand that. But you got to do something. You got to do something when rational, everyday Canadians are starting to question things, especially starting to question the institutions that run the country. This has come on slowly for me. Maybe you think I'm a hyper cynical person. I don't think that I am. I think maybe I've tended in that direction over the past years as I've started making more videos and looking into things more closely. But you got to do something to appease Canadians who are thinking, maybe these politicians that I'm voting for, maybe the central bank who's controlling the currency in the country, maybe it's not actually me that they're looking out for. Just a thought. Maybe it's not the average Canadian that's being looked out for by politicians and by central bankers. And this is just more and more evidence that that's the case. And until you bring me some information that's showing that that's not the case, and that we're actually being served by our politicians and served by our institutions, we can trust our security agencies to actually go after people, right? We can trust that our national security agencies are going to get these tapes and going to find out what's happened and persecute people who have done things that are illegal. Until you show me any evidence that that is actually going to happen, then I'm sorry if I'm a little bit cynical. And this gets into all of the stuff that I talk about on the main channel too. All the stuff where it seems like, and this gets more into the financial side of things, where it seems like, okay, one, it's really corporate interests that are served by the policies of politicians, right? As long as a politician can make a case that they're doing what's right for their citizens, then they'll make that case, and then they'll serve corporate interests. We see this with the immigration policy over the past number of years, keeping wages low for average Canadians, while appeasing the people who own big businesses, big box stores, just helps them to keep wages low and their share prices high. Honestly, right? You have lower wage prices for average Canadians, and as a result, you're going to have a better performing business because those input costs, those costs of doing business, go down. And I think that's largely one of the pushes for the extreme immigration policy that we've seen. And you hear Mark Miller, the immigration minister, saying, "Hey, we're slowing this stuff down. We're gonna slow things down. Don't worry. We're not going to have as many international students. We're not going to be taking advantage of as many international students." And by the way, Mark Miller himself, the immigration minister, said, "Hey, we need these people because it keeps wages low for big box stores. We need employees for these stores. We need employees for Tim Hortons and for Walmart." This is what the immigration minister said. This is not me. This is direct from the horse's mouth. All this to say, our politicians aren't serving us. They're serving corporate interests, one. Two, even if you don't think that politicians are serving corporate interests primarily, and even if you think, okay, maybe politicians have Canadian success at the center of their goals, right? Even if you think that, it's possible that the stats and the information that the politicians are judging themselves off of are heavily skewing what success is. Right? We talk about this all the time with GDP and GDP per capita and the difference between those two things. Of course, Canada, you'll hear the finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, as well as central bankers say, "Hey, in Canada, we've actually seen our economy grow." Can you believe it? We've seen our economy grow. It's wonderful. Our economy is growing by, look at this, 1%. On an annualized rate. Our economy is growing. Our GDP number is growing. And that means that I must be a pretty damn good finance minister. That means that I must be running my monetary policy in a way that's actually helping Canadians. Because look, the number goes up. Doesn't work if you're not looking at the right numbers. Does not work if you're not looking at the right numbers. It's great for a pat on the back, a good headline, a good thing to say. In an interview, to make it seem like you're doing your job. But if you're not looking at the right numbers, you're not doing your job and you're not contributing positively to Canada. Right? If you look at GDP per capita, that's the GDP per person, the actual measure of how productive our society is, like how much economic activity is happening per individual in Canada. You can see that number's going down, and it's actually the worst of all similar countries, right? Canada has some of the lowest projections over the next 20 years for GDP per capita, the productivity per person. which, by the way, is a very good indicator of the quality of life in a country. So politicians can be sitting there saying, look how good the economy is. I'm going to gaslight you into thinking that the economy is doing well because my numbers are saying they are. But when you look at the numbers that actually relate to how individuals are doing, well, turns out it's pretty shitty. And if that number turns positive, then of course they're going to talk about that and say all the things that I'm saying now. GDP is per capita is the best indicator now that it's looking good on us, right? But until it does, no way is a politician going to say, hey, look at the GDP per capita. It's actually going down. We're bringing in way more people into the economy. There's way more spending, way more economic activity happening en masse for the entire country. But when you look at that on a per person basis, it's pretty shit. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see people talking about GDP per capita until it flips, but I don't see that happening. This is to say, whether they're serving corporate interests, whether they're serving Canadians or think that they're doing a good job but are looking at the wrong numbers and patting themselves on the back for the numbers that actually don't make sense, or whether they're caught on tape in the back room of a casino or eating and drinking illegal foods and illegally procured liquors and things like this, or have just done Epstein-like acts and are caught on camera. No matter what three of those things are, it seems like the Canadian government isn't serving Canadians. And I don't think anyone's taking that seriously enough. I don't think that I'm an unreasonable person. I think that I'm reading the information that is presented to me and forming my own views on what's happening here. But more and more so, I come to this conclusion. And people could say, Russell, you're going down a rabbit hole here. You're becoming a conspiracy theorist. They're actually looking out for your best interests. It's not as bad as you say it is. I would love for that to be the case. I would love to say, I know that politicians are looking out for us. I know that they're doing the right things to try to actually improve the country for Canadians. But I'm not seeing evidence of that. And they're not taking it seriously enough to convince me that that's the case, that they're doing the right things for Canadians. And I think that this is an excellent example of that. We know from this committee of parliamentarians that was appointed by the Prime Minister that, hey, yeah, there turns out there might be members of parliament, or it turns out that there actually are. We have credible evidence that there is a group of parliamentarians across multiple parties who are sort of caught up in this operation, who are willingly going along with this. But they say, oh, we're not going to tell you the names. Nobody would tell you the names. We wouldn't give the public any kind of information because that would be betraying our national security allies. Well, how about betraying the average Canadian? How about that? How about do something to assure me that these people who your appointed committee said are doing some fucked up shit, tell me they're not going to be in power over the next decade. I think that they will be. I don't think we're going to get the names. I don't think we're going to get any kind of information that could satisfy me or satisfy anyone, satisfy you. But they're not taking it seriously enough is my point here. I don't think I'm the only one that's getting fed up and questioning the institutions that run our country. I started focusing just on central banks and how there's a centralized group of people that make the decisions about when the economy is going to be feeling good and when it's going to be feeling bad, and when should we pivot away from these things. There's unelected officials doing that at the Bank of Canada, and I think that they're largely following the sort of direction of other central banks and other sort of global monetary associations. I don't think it's serving actual average Canadians. I don't think it is. And nobody's taking that seriously enough. They're saying it's not our fault that Canadians are losing faith in these institutions. It's not our fault that when Canadians go to the polls in 2025, that they're not going to believe that their vote actually has as much weight as it should. There's no way that Canadians can believe that the people that get into positions of power inside of the individual parties, the people who win the leadership races, both for federal leadership like Trudeau or a Poilievre, or for leadership in the individual ridings, being the Liberal candidate in those ridings or the Conservative candidate in those ridings, there's no way that I fully believe that those races that I didn't get to vote in, because I'm not a card-carrying Liberal or card-carrying Conservative, there's no way that I'm going to believe that these people won on their own merit because of what we've seen. Reminder, Han Dong, the Liberal MP for Don Valley North, this is a story that I covered a year ago when it was happening. The main story was that these election races, these pre-election races, these primaries, is a good way to understand it, the leadership races, that they were heavily compromised. There's evidence that shows that there were voters from outside of the area bussed in to ensure that Han Dong won that riding and became the Liberal candidate. The Liberal candidate of a riding that predominantly ends up being Liberal, right? You have these ridings such as like sort of the suburbs outside of Toronto. This is the areas that I know that are Conservative pretty much every single time over the past 15 years. And you have ridings maybe closer to the city that are Liberal every single time for the past 15, 20 years. You know that you're going to win that riding when it comes to the actual vote that people vote on. When that's the case, turns out the actual election is the primary. The actual election is the race to get the candidate spot for whatever party is going to win in the actual election. That's the real decision of who is in power for those ridings. So this is the story with Han Dong. The idea was that they were bussing in people that had Han Dong's name written on their wrist, saying, I don't even know where I am, let alone who I should be voting for. Oh, look at my wrist. I guess I'll vote for that guy because that's who I was told to vote for. This is the kind of interference that was alleged by the Globe and Mail, right? The credible news source by the Globe and Mail. And then we get people suing the Globe and Mail for reporting that kind of stuff. But you can't tell me that these individuals got into their positions in the right way and that my vote now has any kind of power, right? But my point is I'm losing faith in Canada's institutions, which is a sad thing. I love the country, love living here. But I don't think that the people in power are looking out for the interests of the average person. And some of you might be watching this and saying like, this is not news, right? There's lots of people that maybe are farther along this cynicism than I am. But I think there's probably a lot of people that might be shocked to hear me saying some of this stuff. Might be thinking that I've gone too far here. I don't think that I have. And I think that a lot of people might be on the same page as me, even if they got here a little earlier than I did. I just had to talk about this. I had to talk about what was going on here. And I don't think we're ever going to get an answer to it. I think just like the past election interference with Han Dong and the story that broke there, I think that there's going to be some sort of report or some sort of commission that isn't entirely serious and will drag out for 6 months, drag out for 8 months, drag out for a year. Canadians kind of forget about it, move on to the next thing that goes into the news cycle, and then we never find out the names. We never figure out who's on tape doing what, who went to this 53-bedroom mansion casino, and who was caught up in this honeypot operation, which ultimately buys off Canadian politicians, whether it be for the money and the VIP wealthy status, or via blackmail. I don't think we're ever going to know, which is frustrating. But that is that. That is that. C'est la vie. And maybe I'm getting, but maybe I should honestly just be laughing more about it. Maybe that's what we should be doing, is just being like, fuck, what am I going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? And where's my invite? Where's my invite to the casino? Come on. They say that they've gotten involved in the globe, or all of these media agencies and media executives getting paid off, getting involved in this sort of thing. What about the little guy? Where's our magic casino that we can go to in 2020? I wouldn't do anything illegal. Hey, I wouldn't do anything illegal. But I could be bought. Where's my money? I'm kidding, of course. I could be bought, and it's cheap. Why not buy out the little guy? That would be a nice change of pace. Buy out the little guy. If you want a candidate elected, go to the individuals. Put some money in the pockets of citizens. Maybe that I could get behind a little bit more. I'm joking, of course. But I wanted to share this information with you. Not my typical kind of content, but I think I like it. I think I like just hanging out and just talking, and I'm probably pretty shitty at it right now. But I'm going to keep doing it. And I'll let you know on this same channel what else comes up. And maybe we'll do this weekly. Maybe we'll do this every single day for a while. Just talking shit for an hour every day. I think that could be kind of fun. This one started off as a pretty frustrated one, though. Pretty angsty. It may be me taking it all too seriously and not laughing about it a little bit more. Maybe we can laugh more in the future. But thanks for joining me on this first show, and I'm gonna clock out there. I'll catch you later.